I grew up playing soccer, as we call it in the States, and it was something that, while I enjoyed playing it, I never really spent time watching it or playing the video games. Besides dabbling in the Winning 11 games a little bit, because FIFA, at least on the PlayStation 2, always felt very slow to me. In the same way that watching soccer kind of felt slow to me as a kid, it just wasn't as entertaining, it wasn't as thought out and deliberate as the way I would play Madden, a sport that in real life I didn't actually play football, but I seriously enjoyed watching and playing the football video games because I felt like there was a lot more strategy that went into picking my play every single time, and I didn't really mess around with the rosters all too much until I got into just updating the roster files on these older PS2 football games. Did I really start to kind of look into the depths of them and realize now that FIFA actually had the upper hand when it came to roster management. But maybe I'm getting a little bit too far ahead of myself. I watched the show Ted Lasso on Apple TV recently, and it kind of got me interested in trying out a soccer game. And ironically enough, the Ted Lasso character and his in-show team, AFC Richmond, along with its players, is available in FIFA 23 to play as. So that kind of got me interested, and maybe I should check out a soccer game with the intention of being able to play as Ted Lasso, play as some of these characters from a show that I really enjoyed, and explore a sports game that I'm not very familiar with, admittedly. Last year I got quite into MLB The Show, which was very enjoyable, quite a deep career mode experience, and the year prior I got into the WWE video games, which too offer a lot of content. I'm primarily into football video games, most oftentimes older ones, but I'm into sports games just in general. I dabble in racing games as well, but soccer was not a game that I had really gotten into, but I decided to take a chance on FIFA 23 after finding out that most people on the FIFA Reddit just simply recommend you buy the newest FIFA game, in addition to the fact that it did have that Ted Lasso edition that was interesting to me, and it was on sale with the World Cup and whatnot. But I will say that it is an interesting comparison to make to the Madden community, where oftentimes if you look up, what is the best Madden to play on Reddit, you're going to see something like, Madden 08 if you can go back to the PS2. Otherwise, if you got to play it on the 360 or the PS3, Madden 12. And if you only have current gen, well, forget about playing Madden. It's going to be a terrible experience. So nobody ever recommends recently, relatively current, at least, Maddens. Whereas it was ironic to find that while the FIFA community does hate their game in seemingly the same way that the Madden community hates its own game, ultimately it is refreshing, though, to see that at least the current version of FIFA is assumably, in a lot of the fans' minds, the best version of FIFA to play today. And I will say that I did buy FIFA 23 on my Xbox Series S. I did take a look at the Nintendo Switch version. That version is, in my opinion, for being a mobile game, thinking of the Switch as a handheld, is a good soccer experience. I mean, it's better than something you'd have seen on the PSP or the DS. I know that's going back quite a long time ago, but I mean, it really does feel like a console experience on a handheld. And of course, you can also argue that the Switch is a console, and it should be a little bit more updated than that, because to put it quite simply, FIFA 23 on the Nintendo Switch is really something like FIFA 17 or 18 for the Xbox 360 and PS3, just with new things reskinned over it. And I mean, that's true. It plays like a 360 game, but to be able to play a 360 game in my hand is kind of the same novelty as, playing some of the many 360 titles that are ported to the Nintendo Switch 2. It's just this gets treated differently because it's a yearly release. So as somebody that does not watch any level of soccer in any part of the world, I was very surprised about the sheer amount of teams, and most importantly, the sheer amount of players that are available in this game, which I don't know what a lot of these players look like in real life, but to have their photo there and to see their player model, there is a really good resemblance between their player photo and their player model in game. And when you consider that there are literal thousands of players in this game, I think player models are very good, and just the complete depth of being able to run a career mode, being able to grab players from these other teams, again, the negotiations, the transfers, is really remarkable, and makes a very interesting business case for this game as kind of almost like a business sim, and some people do play it that way. That's why there's football manager games that are strictly about that. But I found that to be a very enjoyable aspect, so I kind of toyed with changing around my lineup, getting players from other teams in a way that, felt somewhat realistic in the terms of the negotiations. I mean, you're really there in the negotiating room, negotiating contracts to get these players to come in from other teams, whereas in Madden, you just kind of have that simple menu and you're offering trades. And, and especially in Maddens of a couple of years ago, you were seeing trades that were completely unrealistic being accepted by the CPU. And I feel like there's not quite that level of broken negotiation when it comes to the CPU in these newer FIFA games. So after doing some play now games, I got into actually doing the career mode as a manager. Again, I played as an existing manager, Ted Lasso, which the fact that playing as an existing manager is a new feature this year seems like it should have came along quite a while ago, but that's beside the point. It's very cool to be able to manage every aspect of the team like this, and again, just feel a sort of depth in terms of getting different players that there isn't in Madden, and maybe there isn't that sort of depth in American football because of the trade restrictions. There's not these transfers and whatnot like you have in soccer, but regardless, an enjoyable experience as a manager. Now, the player career mode is admittedly much weaker. I mean, think like Face of the Franchise in Madden. It's not a great experience, and overall it forces you into this really silly camera angle, at least by default, that I don't really like. It's kind of like an end-to-end look. Also, you're player locked to your player, which is very difficult to manage in a soccer game, and it's understandable when you're a quarterback or a running back in a career mode in a Madden game to be player locked, but in this case, being player locked just oftentimes feels like more of a hurdle, and you're relying very heavily on the CPU to make good decisions. So the manager career mode was great, being able to play as all the different players in the field, manage the overall aspects of the team, but the player career mode is something that I would definitely take a pass on if you're looking at playing FIFA for the first time. But like I said, I played some play now games, just kind of get used to the controls first off, and I was using the alternative control scheme, which felt more natural to me for whatever reason, but there is even simplified control schemes. There's a 1-button control scheme, a 2-button control scheme, so if you really want to simplify this down as you're trying to get into it, there are definitely ways to do that. I would say that there are other game modes. Obviously, FIFA Ultimate Team. There's Volta, which is supposed to be kind of like FIFA Street, which I did play on the 360 and the PlayStation 2, but I haven't explored those to the same depth that I checked out the career mode, and I do think that eventually I will get around to that. It's just nice to see that that extra content is there. And obviously, if you're on Xbox like I am, either with the EA Play subscription, which is only $30 a year, or Game Pass, which is obviously a bit more, but gives you a bit more access to tons of different kinds of content, it's going to include FIFA 23 very soon. I mean, I think the game will probably reach the service in May or June. That's my guess based on how things went last year. I am glad, however, that I bought 23 to own it just as a Ted Lasso fan, because I'm assuming that Ted Lasso and AFC Richmond will not return in FIFA 24, but then again, there is not going to be a FIFA 24, as we're going to have an interesting situation as FIFA takes back its license and EA is just going to start making a generic soccer team game, so EA Sports FC or something like that. So if you do want the last EA game that has the FIFA license, you should probably watch for this one to come on sale sometime this summer when it kind of bottoms out in price, probably around, like $15, maybe $10 even, as they just try to sell it off before they lose the license altogether and move to making it a little bit more of a generic game, which I'm sure will still have licensed players, but I'm assuming the licensing is just going to be segmented up more. I don't know. It'll be good to see competition, though, in the soccer space, as we've seen with football games in the past, decades prior, really, that competition does drive a better product. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I will see you in the next video.